Tiger Heads, it is Match Sim Friday. It's Friday the 24th of January, and the Tigers had another Match Sim session today, which I think we're going to see a little bit more of as we roll into the practice matches in Feb and then leading into round one. So nice to have a bit of continuity, knowing what to look out for and when. So I'm pretty sure the club's already posted some photos up on their website. We'll roll a couple through this video as well from the Match Sim, and make sure you go check that out. Now, scouring the internet for some Match Sim reports, and the most comprehensive one I found was definitely by far from HK Tiger on Punt Road End. So well done, HK. Your match report was exemplary, much better than anything I was ever imagining. So we'll take some notes from that and read through some of the good parts. But massive shout out to HK Tiger. The Punt Road End crew are doing exceptionally well at attending training sessions, it must be said. So they're doing God's work, I reckon, keeping the Tiger faithful informed. So looking at the notes from HK, so they did like the normal warm-up and drills and stuff like that at the start, but then they went into 4-period match sim, which was 15 minutes for one quarter, followed by a 12-minute, followed by a 10, followed by a 7. Kind of like a closing out the game, I suppose, game simulation quarter, I guess you would call it. Teams were either yellow or black, with yellow a little more like the probables, and HK mentioned that yellow won by a couple of goals. Not that a couple of points, not that matters in the grand scheme of things, but good to know nonetheless. Of note was the first period was very good by both teams, good structure, good work rate, and some terrific skills. Second period a little sloppy, but third and fourth were good. So that's good to hear those terrific skills, because that was probably the one thing amongst many things that was absent a lot last year, was the poor skills that were on display. And I think a lot of that was probably confidence as well. You could see the confidence was shot. A few players had checked out last year. So with a bit more youth injection, it's a bit more vibrant, upbeat. It seems to be, a bit more fresh and new and exciting for everybody. So they're running on top of the ground and hitting targets, which is better than what we had last year. Some of the key takeaways from HK on Punt Road End mentioned that Lynch was wearing yellow and playing as a key forward, and they were much better going forward. Lynch kicked 2 or 3 goals out of a possible 6 or 7. He looks really good, and I think it's important that Tom Lynch has done, I think, pretty much every main session so far this pre-season. And honestly, I didn't think he was probably going to be up to that. So the fact he's out there doing all the sessions and getting the run into the legs is a really, really good sign, because we missed him terribly last year. And, if he plays 14 or 15 games this year, we'll win more games than some people think, I reckon. And you don't want to pin it all on one player, but he makes such a big difference to us structurally. The next line got me a little bit excited on the back of my video from the other night. Samson Ryan rucked versus Nankervis, which makes sense. Nank won the first quarter, but then after that, Samson won the rest of them. Samson was good around the ground, as well as with some good contested marks. And then Caesar actually backed on top of that, saying that for those fantasy lovers out there, a highlight bit of play for Caesar was Samson Ryan sent a clearance tap to Lawler, exploding out the front, and a bullet 45-metre kick to Taranto, resting forward, who kicked the goal. And Main Landy was another one who went from Punt Road End, who also made mention of Samson Ryan, mentioning that he was probably the standout from the training session, which was really, really interesting, and actually really, really a sigh of relief for me, because I obviously put the video out the other night about that I think that Samson Ryan could take the #1 ruck mantle, maybe not in 2025, but I just feel like it's on the cards, and I feel like he's about to come into his own a little bit at that right age bracket. He's got the size on him now, just needs the confidence to go with it. But the one thing from that video, a lot of people were knocking Samson's contested marks. So what was really impressive to see in these reports is that a lot of people were noting that he was taking some really good contested marks around the ground. And yes, I understand it's training, but these players are still fighting for spots. So it's still a good bit of competition without it being an opposition club. So it's good signs. It's good steps forward is what I want to say for Samson Ryan. HK Tiger went on to say that Trezise and Smith were impressive off half-back for the Yellows, which is really good to hear. And I think I flagged this before a few times, that I've heard it from several people that Caleb Smith has been absolutely eyeing off that half-back flank role in the absence of Dan Rioli. And it's been well noted. I'm a big fan of Trezise. And he's just been a little bit unlucky not being able to stay on the park with injury. So it's going to be interesting, because I'm not quite sure if we can play both in the same team on the half-back line, because I feel like the Jaden Short's going to occupy one of those half-back flanks. So maybe that was kind of, I know, an audition. They were playing on the same team, but they're also fighting for the same spot, which will be interesting, because I know Smith did that really well as a youngster, so I'm keen to see what he does. But yeah, so it could be some selection issues down back. In a good way, in a good way. HK went on to say that Hugo Ralphsmith played well, mainly on the wing, but also in some centre square work. Really played well to the game plan, holding his space and providing an option and getting involved physically when he had to. That's a really pleasing thing to hear, because as much as people knocked Camden McIntosh and Marlon Pickett playing on a wing, the one thing they did extraordinarily well, especially Camden McIntosh, he was extremely selfless. He would stand there and guard space and block off the corridor, sacrificing his own game for the betterment of the game plan and the team. And if Hugo can have that same type of buy-in, that's going to be a massive, massive part to our game plan. And Hugo's, as we know, has got blistering speed. Probably not as strong overhead as what Camden is just from what I could tell. But he probably offers a little bit more of a different dynamic with blistering speed and be able to break the lines a bit more than what McIntosh did. So very good to see Hugo playing on the wing. I do feel like there's been a passing of the baton from the wingers, and I feel like we will see two relatively young wingers for the whole year, making it their own, which is nice. It's just who plays on the other side is what I'm a little bit unsure of. Jack Ross played as an inside mid in periods 3 and 4 and was very good. And as Hopper had dominated as the inside mid in the first period. Good to hear about Jack Ross. I was actually about to do a video on him, and I actually put him into my team for December, my January rolling best 22 team, which is coming out in a couple of days. But yeah, Jack Ross, he's an inside midfielder at heart. I think the wing experiment has to be done. I'm just not fully sure how we fit all of them in there, to be honest. But good to hear that Jack Ross is doing well. Lawler laid a brilliant tackle on Nank and also got a couple of clearances and a stellar pass. I think there was... Yes, Mainlandy mentioned that he did try and break one or two many tackles, and Lynchy grabbed him and nailed Lawler holding the ball. And then went back and slotted it from 50, so I'm sure Lynch would have had a pretty good laugh at that at the expense of Sam Lawler. HK went on to mention that Trainer did some brilliant defensive stuff, although he did mess up one crossfield pass, but that's okay. You know what, with those crossfield passes, they probably look really bad, especially when you're doing it on the big stage. But if it's... I'm kind of the view with these young kids, if they're going to take on risky kicks like that, I would rather them do it. And if it doesn't come off, you can't got to go so be it. They're going to learn from it. They're going to get better from learning from their mistakes. I think we have to take the good with the bad. So good to hear that he's taking those kicks on at training. Actually good to see a little bit of a mention on training, because we kind of hadn't heard something for a while. So that was really good. Blight and Miller defensively strong. Blight struggled a little bit on Lynch initially, but then lifted and killed some contests really, really well. Fawcett got a bit more involved this time, taking some strong grabs. Bauer was a little quiet earlier, then got involved with some brilliant pack marks, which was good. I think there was a video on the Richmond Instagram of one of his pack marks. And Banks was solid and got involved and held the structure. So for me, I've kind of got Banks earmarked as the other wing. I'm not sure if the club sees it that way, but yeah, I've always kind of thought that Banks and Hugo will occupy opposite wings, but we'll see. All I do know is the clubs do hold Banks in really, really high regard, and they think he's got probably the highest ceiling, the highest talent from his draft class from the players that we picked in that year. So hopefully he kicks on with it. The final message that HK had mentioned, which is probably the most pleasing part of the whole thing, to be totally honest, that the buy into the structure and the effort is very evident. The draftees obviously struggled a little bit with the structure, but the rest get it and are working hard to the required and desired structure. And there's a lot of verbal support from teammates and coaches on where to be and what to do. So that was a fairly comprehensive report from HK Tiger from Punt Road End. So a massive shout out there, doing amazing work with the training reports. But good to see all that stuff's happening in match simulation. Like I said, I think we're going to see a bit more match sim as the weeks roll on. It sounds like it's a every Friday thing. So if you are in the area, make sure you drop down to Punt Road. I'm sure it's not fully open, but you might be able to view it through the fence and get a couple of photos and some videos. But yeah, that is the match simulation report for Friday. Make sure you like and subscribe for more Tiger news, and I'll catch you for the next video.